Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How are you all?
Good. How are you?
I am well. Good to see you all tonight. It's been about 2 weeks since we were here doing this, and we got a lot to talk about tonight, so I'm excited. So let's see. I'm going to be looking down for everybody that's joining us on tonight. I'm going to be looking down at my phone so that I can follow you all in the chat. Oh, let me turn it down. So I can follow you all in the chat and read your comments. Please feel free to comment, ask questions, join in. This is a group discussion. This is not just the three of us. This is the three of us having a conversation publicly, and we really want to invite you to join the discussion. So it's been a long week. Lots going on. The last time we were here, we were talking about lessons from quarantine, and that was a fun discussion with you all. So before we go ahead and get started, I am Dewan Jordan. I am a life defining and business coach, and I help individuals to define their life and business before it defines them. And so I am in the process of writing a book called My Story, My Life, Our Lessons. And so I thought about doing this My Story Mondays to kind of help pre-launch the book and help prepare everybody for what we'll be talking about in the book. And in the book, I'll be talking about lessons from my life, things I've learned, different experiences, how I've made mistakes, how I've failed, how I've succeeded, and the lessons that I learned from that, and teaching other people how to use all of their life experiences and find the moments in those stories that have really impacted their lives and helped them to become the people that they are today. So that's who I am, and I'm going to let my two special guests introduce themselves and my friends. Catherine, if you want to go ahead and just tell everybody who you are.
I am Kathleen Jeter. I am first and foremost a very proud mother of two wonderful young men, Jack and Austin, who are my heartbeats. And I am the humble servant of District 5, Hamilton County Commissioner of District 5. Excited to say that each and every day I get up to say that and to serve one of the best districts here in Hamilton County. And so, yeah, that's who I am.
Thanks. And I am Kristen McWhirter. By day, I am the Community Outreach Manager for the Area Agency on Aging and Disability, really working in my purpose with helping older adults maintain their independence at home and in the community with dignity and choices. I also am a proud mom of two. I have a 26-year-old son, Jamal, and an 18-year-old daughter, Jada. So proud mom of those two, and then just a community resource and a servant helping in any capacity that I can to make our community better. That's just a little bit about me.
Thank you. And these are two wonderful ladies, women that I admire so much, who inspire me and who are always in my corner. I don't care what kind of crazy idea I have or what kind of crazy idea they have. We're always ready to jump in and help each other. And so I'm just so blessed to have you all on my team and to be a part of your team. So
yes.
Tonight is going to be some heavy discussion. We have a very heavy topic that I feel like we need to talk about. The last time we talked, like I said, we were talking about lessons from quarantine. And so this was actually supposed to be part 2 of that, but we would be remiss if we did not address some of the things that are going on in this community at this time, in this country at this time. And so we are kind of diverting the focus because there are many lessons in this. And so I think that it's still relevant, and it's what we're going to do. So before we get started, because it's going to be so heavy, I want to just kind of have a little light fun really fast. And I'm going to ask you all a question. Let me think. A fun question just to kind of do like a little icebreaker before we get into it. Okay. So since we were supposed to talk about quarantine and we're really not talking about that today, Let me ask you this question. Is there anything that you found yourself kind of stockpiling on or hoarding since all of this began, whether it was in the beginning when all of the stuff with COVID-19 started or now? Is there anything in particular that you've been hoarding or stockpiling? What is it, Kathleen? I can see that look.
I don't know if I should admit this, considering the role that I play within my church, but I will, since you asked the question. So one of my weaknesses is food, because I love to eat. But my other weakness is, and my friends, my best friends, my sisters, they know this, is chocolate. And so I have been stockpiling Hershey Kisses, like lots of it.
So the last time we talked, you tried to put it on King. You kept talking about it was
that Hershey Kisses in my house. So that's one of my stockpiles. I get the hug and kiss on my Hershey Kisses, my true Hershey Kisses. But I literally, like, especially like the neighborhood Walmart down the street from me, they went on sale. And so like when it went on sale, it was like I could buy more. So like I have a cabinet full right now if y'all want some.
I was gonna ask you how large your stockpile. I definitely do. So you can put it on the porch. I'll let you know before I pull up. What about you, Chris?
Well, mine is just food in general. I just keep going to the store with my mask and buying food. My kids are you getting more food? I mean, they're not worried about I'm going to run out of food. I just keep going and getting things. I'm like, well, maybe we might need more of this, or maybe we may need more of that. So just food in general.
Okay. That's so both of you are food. I'm trying to think, what have I been stockpiling? I don't, and it's crazy I asked that question because I can't even think of anything I've been stockpiling personally because I hoard everything anyway. We talked about this the last time with my tote. So I don't think that it's anything in particular that I've started stockpiling on. I will say that I was hiding. Like I said, I'm quarantining with my parents. So I had some disinfectant Lysol and I was hiding Lysol because I didn't want them to use all this spray because I didn't know how long we would be here. But I ended up having to share it. I was like, Lysol, the disinfectant. And I said, how crazy is it to hide Lysol when they need to use it too to keep from getting me sick? So I ended up putting my stash in. Within a couple of days it was gone, which confirmed why I was hiding it. So, but there's not been anything in particular. But okay, I just thought that was a fun question. I have some more, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So if anyone has not heard about hasn't heard about what's going on in our country with George Floyd and the situation in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and how he was murdered by a police officer, by the police officers putting his knee on his neck as he said he was trying to subdue him. And it's been a lot of things that has happened in the aftermath. He did end up losing his life and he actually begged for his life. And if you have not seen it, it is a horrible, horrible sight to see. And if you choose, I think that you should go online and just Google it. And you probably don't even have to do that because if you're on Facebook, I guarantee you've probably seen it in your timeline at some point. So we're going to discuss some of that because it's so much that has come out of this whole situation. And so I'm going to start it off by just asking you all to kind of kick it off for us. And where were you, or have you, I know you all have seen the video, but where were you when you saw the video for the first time, and what was your initial thoughts?
So for me, I was here at home and saw it over the news. And my initial thoughts was, if to be honest, was just not again, my heart just immediately was heavy and just started hurting. And I instantly just start thinking back of all of the other individuals and families that have found themselves in the same predicament. And, you know, it's just, it makes you, this situation just makes you kind of turn the mirror to yourself and look at, you know, your own self and your own, especially if you're an individual or a mother like myself who's raising African American young men. It just really just makes you internalize it and just, you know, think about your own kind of identity and what's going on within your own community and how you're processing it. So it just was an instant just heaviness and just a hurt, an aching hurt. Never met this young man, never, you know, don't know him, don't know his family, but yet my heart just instantly went out to them and just has been hurting since the moment that I heard and saw the video.
What about you, Chris?
Same for me, you know, since we are quarantined and working from home, I was home and saw just a snippet of the video. And so I was trying to figure out, you know, what was going on and looked online and saw a longer version of the video. And just, I mean, my heart ached for him as he was crying out for help. And there was nobody that could help him, you know, and it just felt like a hopeless, helpless situation. And just to sit there and watch it, was just, it was heartbreaking as well. And my mind, of course, as Kathleen stated, went back to the other people who have been in this situation.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah, it is. So when I saw it for the first time, I actually, the night before, I had downloaded a app called Quibi, because it was a movie on there, Free Rayshawn, and I had been wanting to see it. I remember when the preview came out and I wanted to see it. And so I downloaded it because it came across, I think I was on YouTube or something, and I saw it and I was like, oh, I forgot I wanted to see that. And so I downloaded it. And the whole movie is really talking about, it's just a situation like the Trayvon Martin, the Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. It's just that kind of situation. And I remember I watched it and it was just like heartbreaking. And so literally I finished watching it. I got off and I went to Facebook and it was the first video that came up. And I have to be honest, and I truly had to pray. My entire life, I've never hated anyone, not the person that shot TJ, not anybody's ever done me wrong. I've never had hate in my heart at all for anyone. But that was probably the first time all of a sudden I felt almost close to hate in that moment. And I had to literally pray because I was like, I cannot allow the actions of someone else make me harbor hate. You know, and so I remember I went downstairs and I showed it to my mom and I was so angry. And I showed my mom and I was shaking because I was just like, how can anyone that's human literally sit on someone's neck that long and listen to them call on their mother, ask for help and say, I can't breathe, and literally sit there after he goes limp. So I was just very angry and I prayed about it and instantly it left my heart before it really penetrated it. But I was still so angry. And then it went from anger to sadness. And so it's just, we've seen this many, many times over the years. I mean, I can remember watching Rodney King when I was a little girl. And I didn't really understand exactly the depth of it then, but I knew that it was wrong and I thought it was crazy, but I didn't follow it like that. You know, you would just see it. But my dad was, you know, he watched it. And so I remember seeing on TV and then it was a big thing. But we've seen Trayvon Martin and all of these, Breonna, all of these people. And so for this have been going on for so long, what do you think was like the straw that broke the camel's back with this one? What do you think in this moment made George Floyd's death just kind of go to the level that it's on now?
I think I think one of the things that I heard, and I've heard, I'm a person that feeds off words, and so I heard it put this way, and it was profound exhaustion. And that's literally what this feels like, you know, kind of what you said, you know, being so mad and, you know, so tired. You know, there's so many people that we have just reached their point. And I think for me, since, you know, the last few days, what I have really been kind of, you know, thinking about and really just internalizing is this struggle when you look down through our history, this sense of what's playing out on our TVs and on the news. Like, we haven't seen anything like this since 1968. Like, the protesting and all that's, you know, happening nationally in all these different cities in terms of, you know, the rioting and the looting and all of this, that hasn't taken place since 1968. Now we're 52 years later, we're in 2020, and the narrative is still the same. Like, let that sink in. Like, that's what I struggle with. You know, you would think, like, that's a long time in history. And within the last 6 years, like, that's 6 years is not a long time, but just within the last 6 years, as you just named some of the names have appeared across our TVs, but the stories have remained the same. They haven't changed. Black male, Black person killed by police. So that's what I struggle with, and it's just a sense. I think that what I think this situation has changed is exhaustion. People are tired. It's like people have reached their enough. They have just been pushed against that wall. And I think that's what we're seeing manifest nationally.
That's very true. Thank you. I'm looking at the chat, and Julian Fairbanks, he says, watch, pray, and stay out of the way is all I have to say. It's about to get rough out here. It's already rough out here. Yeah. And you're right, Julian. This is only the beginning, honestly. This is only the beginning of a long road for this country in order to make the changes that are necessary and critical. Hi, Robin Massengill. I see you in here. Greetings to you. Miss Suzanne Freeman, she said, DeWan, yes, 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 too many. She's referring to the lives that have been lost. Hi, Miss Sydney. So thank you all for joining us. If you want to just communicate with us in the chat, put in the chat, basically, you know, your feelings. If you have any response to why you feel that this may have taken on the level and gotten the attention and the awareness that it has, feel free to join us in the chat. You can drop your feelings. How did you actually feel when you first heard it? And where were you when you first saw the video? So you said something key. And did you want to chime in on that, Kristen?
Okay. No, you go ahead.
Okay. You said something key. You said people they've had enough. And I agree. My dad and I had a conversation earlier, and we were just talking. I kind of asked him the same thing. Why do you think out of all the deaths and killings and things, do you feel like this has taken on so much of gotten so much awareness? And he made a great point. He said, number one, you know, he said the same things we've said, but he said also we're in quarantine. Many people are in quarantine, and there hasn't been another time where people have had it right in front of their faces all day long. You know, people aren't going to work, people aren't going out and about. And so it's in your face all day long. So now it's almost like you have to pay attention, you know? And then I also feel like it was just so blatant. Like many of the videos, it might have a little gray area, even though we know what it is. It might be a little gray area where it's not. But this one was so blatant. There is no way you can look at this, like some of the others too, but yeah. This one, and just, I mean, humanity. That's the word I keep hearing from everyone. Humanity. Where is your humanity? Like, you have to have a lot of evil in your heart for you to be able to do that to someone. One of the things, and I'm trying to think which one I want to ask first. I'll just go into this and then I'll come back to it. I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing about this is it's definitely about George Floyd. It's about Ahmaud Arbery. It's about Trayvon Martin. It's about all of these people who have lost their lives to violence. But at the end of the day, the core thing about this is racism, and that's at the core of it all. Is racism. So let me ask you this question: do you remember, and have you ever experienced racism? And if so, can you tell me your first experience that you can remember with it? And
I
also, sorry, just also in the chat, if you have once again, please join us in this conversation. I'll be looking down and commenting on the things that you put in there.
For me, like most African American Black people, we remember the first encounter that we've had with racism and with prejudice. And I remember it very clearly, you know, because I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I grew up on Lookout Mountain, so an affluent white neighborhood. And all the people I went to school with were white. If there were any other Black people at my school, they were my cousins or, you know, my siblings. So I grew up in that kind of environment, and I think my parents did a really good job of just trying to shield me from that I was different, or that there was anything different about me from the people that I was around and the people that I considered friends. But I had a sleepover in third grade, and my mom said I could invite 4 girls, and I could only have 4. So I was really excited about it. I picked those 4 girls out and invited them to my house. And I remember that one of them said she couldn't come because her mom would not allow her to spend the night at a Black person's house. And I just remember it hit me really hard at that age. Like, I just did not understand, because I had spent the night at this friend's house before. So it's kind of like you're thinking there shouldn't be a problem. They've allowed me to be in their house, but she wouldn't allow, her mom wouldn't allow, you know, her to stay at my house. And that hit me really hard at that age. And it made me become aware from then on that there was something different, and people saw something different about me and about my skin color.
Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Catherine?
So for me, mine is a little different, and we kind of talked about this earlier, is that I don't recall, and I actually, since our conversation earlier, have been really thinking hard, like what experiences have I really encountered in terms of just direct, racism. And truth be told, I really haven't, but it's been, I think, the subtle experiences. So, my upbringing was a lot different. I grew up in Italy. Both my parents were in the military, and I was raised by my mom, a single mom. And so growing up overseas in Italy was a very different experience for me. And I sometimes talk about how, for me, I didn't really identify or see race until we moved back here to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And when we lived in Italy, my mom got engaged to a wonderful man. His name was Sandro, an Italian. And when we were over there, my mother and I were very much accepted here. I was enrolled in a Catholic school, the only, colored girl, Black girl in this school. In the village and the community where Sandro's parents lived, they were very accepting of me as a young girl. So didn't really experience that over there. And so when Sandro actually would come back to the States to visit with my mother and I, that's when, as a young child, that I would see the looks that my mother and he would get. And I can, that's Jack. Everybody say hi to Jack. I remember the looks, and we never got those looks when we used to travel in Europe. We used to travel to, Germany and different places. My mom and Sandro never got looks, if they hold hands or they kissed in public, they never got those looks. But when we came here to Chattanooga on vacations, they always got looks. And I can remember, looking at those individuals and looking at Sandra and my mom, like, why are people looking at us like we got some type of disease or something? And I think that to me was that experience of kind of that racism and questioning. And then even, people in our family, kind of looking at my mom differently because of who she was, in love with and dating and about to get married to. So that was my earliest experience of that there's a difference between the color of your skin.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. So I'm looking in the comments, and Anya Ruffin says, first time I can recall, I was 10 and in a small town in North Carolina. A man walked up on me in a gas station and called me the N-word. I went to the car and told mom, and they had words. Good thing she knew Jesus. I know that's right. Robin Massigill says, until we get to the root, it will not change. The root is the evil one, and until his church stands up, speaks out loudly and boldly, hearts will not change. Hearts are hardened. That is absolutely right, Robin.
Yes,
Thanks
that's absolutely.
So, okay, Tia says, I was in the 4th grade and we lived off of Wells Street in Fort Wayne. We were the only Black kids that walked to school during the time. Me and my siblings had to fight off white kids because we didn't belong in their neighborhoods. And that is just so unfortunate that kids have to be faced with this. And it's definitely taught. It's not you aren't born into this world racist. You aren't born into this world with prejudices. It's something that's taught and learned. I can remember my first experience. I went to John A. Patton. It's closed now here in Chattanooga. But my mom was a teacher there, and it was only like 4 Black kids in the entire K through 12 school. TJ and I were 2 of them. Another, her mother, I think, was a teacher, and it was another Black kid, but I don't remember if his parent worked there or not. But I remember I was in the cafeteria. I was in the 1st grade. And this older, like I said, it was K through 12. I was in 1st grade. This older white guy, and I don't really know how old he was. When I think back, I thought he was like in high school, but he may not have been. I was so small. And I remember I would get chocolate milk, and he took my chocolate milk carton and poured it all over my tray and over my food. And I was so angry. And so afterwards, and he was older. I didn't know what to do. So we went to go take our trays up to go back to class. And I remember the lunch lady was an older white lady. She started just yelling at me, saying that I poured my milk in my tray. And I'm like, I didn't do it. And I was trying to tell her, then she wouldn't listen to me. She reported me. So I ended up having to go to the principal's office. And that's during the time that you could paddle. And my mom, like I said, was a teacher. So I took off to my mom's room when I had to go to the office, and she went with me. And I was just so angry, and I didn't get paddled because my mom was there. I don't even remember what she said, what happened. But I remember the principal just giving me this long lecture about being disobedient. And I'm thinking, I didn't even do it. Listen to me. I'm trying to tell you. And I remember I was had told somebody about it after school. And I remember they told me, when you go to school, me chocolate. And when you go to school, you tell him at least vanilla milk. Try to not hate the school. Tell them, at least I'm not vanilla milk. Never saw him again. But it just goes to show that was not the correct information to tell someone who had just experienced that. I was in the 1st grade, but it just goes to show things. And so that was my first experience with, and I was so angry, and I just remember being angry at that age. And then I'm just gonna, because Anya said something about the gas station. My recent encounter with it was not my most recent, but the one that stands out the most. A couple years ago, I was at the gas station on Highway 58. And when I walked in, it was a white man in there, and he had on all fatigues, from head to toe. And I remember walking around the gas station, he just kept staring at me. And I'm like, why is he staring? So it was making me really uncomfortable. It was that obvious. And so when I got to the register to check out, he was up there talking to the cashier. They must have been friends, and he was just there drinking coffee. And he kept staring. And so when I got ready to check out, he looked at me and he said, "You have got to be the most beautiful nigga gal I've ever seen in my life." And I remember just sitting there like, what did he just say to me? But the thing about it, I didn't go off. I didn't say, I just got myself and I got out of there. But I said that to say, I truly don't believe that he felt that was that he was wrong. I truly believe that he felt that he was giving me a compliment. And that just goes to show that some people, you know, can be racist, and because they're accustomed to it and may not even see the fault, you know, in some of their views or some of the things that they say, if that's what they're accustomed to being around. So I just thought about that experience.
Well,
I
you
see
know,
Tia. Go ahead.
you mentioned that, you know, what was different about this, what's different about what's happening right now, from the other incidences. And I think part of that is the culture that our country is in right now, and the climate, and when people feel comfortable expressing things that maybe they haven't always expressed. You know, the prejudice and the racism was there, but they didn't feel comfortable enough um, to express it. So I think you put that in the mix with everything else that's going on, and it's just the boiling point. It's the
Yeah.
tip point. You know, I had an experience in Walmart just recently, where there was a white couple and we were getting ready. You know, everybody's trying to stay 6 feet apart, and we were just getting close to each other. So I stepped back, and the wife was trying to apologize because we didn't know who was going to step back first. And her husband just put his hands up and he said, "I'm not worried about a black bee." I mean, and he said it under his breath to her, but I heard him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, this is what we're dealing with now. I
Yeah.
mean, forget the initial experiences racism, what we're dealing with right now in 2020.
Yeah. And it's crazy because as you're telling me that, I'm starting to have all of these flashbacks of different experiences I've had, but I forgot about them until we're just talking about them. And I'm like, wow, maybe I've experienced this. But that's kind of sad, because does that mean that, not that you ever get used to it, but is it happening so much and so frequently that you can't necessarily remember individual experiences because you've experienced it so many times? I'm just thinking what you said, it brought back to memory when I was at the store, and I forgot about it until I saw it come up in my memories about a couple months ago. Several years ago, I was at a store, a restaurant or something, and I remember holding the door. It was a lady in a wheelchair and her husband, older couple, he was pushing her. And I remember opening the door and like holding it so that they can come out. And the husband said, "Thank you, ma'am." And she said, "Don't be thanking her." She said, "That's what they supposed to do." And I remember just like, wow, like this woman had an oxygen machine on. She's in a wheelchair. And I'm thinking, wow, you're not even well. And you're being mean out here, just being mean to people. Then I had to think to myself, that might be why she's so mean. She's miserable. So maybe this doesn't have to do with me. Because I truly believe that when people are racist, it doesn't have to do with the other person. It has to do with them and something in their heart. TJ says, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that it has to do with just with what you were just talking about, is that sense of, you know, why are we just now like why you're just remembering all these other experiences that you have had when it comes to racism. And I think the word that comes up in my mind, and I always am talking about it, is trauma. And what a lot of people don't talk about, even, and I don't care, you know, what the color of your skin is, and that's racial trauma. And that's what this is. It's race-based stress. When you think about what stress does on your body, there is this sense of forgetfulness, right? Stress has a tendency to do that. And if you even take it a little further, we've all heard the term of post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And so when you look at how that manifests on your body, there is a sense of, you lose sense of some of those past experiences. But if something triggers, something happens, like a murder of a George Floyd in our community, in our nation, then all of those other memories and all of those other experiences, they all start to come back. They all start to flood back. And so that's what that racial trauma, that PTSD does. And then there's also that historical trauma. There's a lot of healing that has not taken place over the context of our history that we as a society have to own up to. That's not just as Black people, that's for all people. And so I think that's kind of why that sense of all of this is starting to really be real for so many people here, here in our nation.
I like what you said about the racial trauma, because until you said that to me the other day, I had never even heard that term. But it's so true. I remember when Arlene Story was here several years ago doing our women's conference, she was speaking to everybody on trauma. She's a psychotherapist, the best one in the world. So she's great, everyone. But she was doing a skit, and she was talking about, it's something called stacking. And this is like, if you have a trauma, you put it in a box and you just put it up in the closet and say, I'll deal with that later. Then something else happens. You put that in the box, and before you know, one day you go in the closet, you pull out the box, and all of these things just fall. You open the box and all of the other boxes just fall down. And you have forgotten. And now you are forced to deal with all of these traumas. And I realized when she said that, like, wow, that's what I've done all my life. I experienced one thing, you go through it, put it on the shelf, keep moving, because life goes on. Something else, put on the shelf, keep moving. And then one day, something like the George Floyd situation happens, and all of this stuff just come back, and it comes full circle. And now you have all of these things and traumas in your life that you've never dealt with. And now you have to deal with it, whether you like it or not. You have to deal with it, or it's going to destroy you, and you're going to hurt other people through not dealing with it. And so I think that was genius, that racial trauma. I have, so I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat talking about their children and experiences that they've had with their children. I want to ask this to everyone in the chat, and even you all. And I feel like I know the answer. I don't have children, but I'm just going to pose the question because I think it's a good discussion. How different racism look when it's directed towards you, and how different is it if it's directed towards your child? Does it bring more anger? Either way is going to make you mad, but does it bring more anger, or what? Have you experienced that at all? And this for people in the chat as well. Have you all experienced that?
I don't necessarily think anger is the word that I think it comes up. For me, I'm more fearful. And I'm fearful of what my today looks like for my boys, for Jack and Austin, but more so what the tomorrows look like for Jack and Austin, as well as for many others, you know, the other men and Black boys that exist. You know, it's the fear that I struggle with every day as a mom raising both of those young men. And then for me, and we've talked about this, Dewan, is that, you know, not only am I raising both of them, but I'm raising one that has an intellectual disability. So that's an added concern that I struggle with constantly, is that not only, you know, do I have to constantly engage with them and have that conversation about, you know, what it means to be an African-American young male living into today's society, what the barriers that they're going to face. But I also have to, you know, equally talk to Austin, who, you know, is Jack's other advocate alongside of me, in terms of when he's out and he has his brother, you know, what does that look like? Because, you know, I think too often and wonder that if we have these unique challenges and barriers that exist within our law enforcement, just on how they interface and deal with people of color, you can imagine my concern and my fear when it comes to how they deal and interact with my son who has an intellectual disability. Are they equipped? Are they trained? Are they knowledgeable about adults and about children with intellectual disabilities? And I think too far often as a society, you know, we group people in categories, and, you know, a physical disability is so different than an intellectual disability. And so I fearful is the word that comes to mind. I wake up every day just very much fearful of what their today looks like and what their tomorrow looks like.
That's the same for me, is the fear. And it's a different level of fear for my son than it is for my daughter. Just because for the Black male, there is what we're dealing with today is the concern. And, you know, I know my son, but by the look of him, if you look at him, you don't know his character. And so I get concerned about how someone will see him. You know, he's, like I said, he's 26. So I even have the irrational thoughts of like, what is he dressing like, and what does he look like, and how is someone going to perceive him because he fits the description. He fits that standard description of that Black male, 5'8", short hair. So it's just that fear that every time he leaves the house, that he's gonna come back home.
And it's so unfortunate that as a African American that we even have to think like that. We should be able to get up in the morning, especially our Black males, and put on whatever they want. Now, if it's something that someone doesn't approve of and don't like, then that's on them. But they should not have to decide on their outfit based on whether they want to live or die that day. You know what I mean? They should not have to have a certain hairstyle or not be able to go to a certain area or be more careful in different places based on the color of their skin, and it's just so unfortunate, but it's reality. It's reality. We have to, as a Black person, you have to think differently. You have to process differently. You have to make different decisions that you normally would make in other circumstances, because we are the minority and, everybody does not value that. And so this is just such a heavy topic, and there's so many different things that you would want to really tackle in this moment. But being able to talk about the things that are most important is key. And let's talk a little bit about the protesting. The protest that's taking place across this country, different, even in our own in place. What are your thoughts on that?
I apologize, you went out a little bit for me, but I guess you were talking about our thoughts on the protest and what's going on. I, it's just, I understand everyone's frustration. I think we think about George Floyd screaming for his life, saying he can't breathe, and watching that. And then the whole time, people have been trying to bring attention to this. People have been screaming this. People have been saying something has to change, and nobody's been listening. And so it's like they've been talking about in the media as well, or some of the commentary, the cry of the unheard. And I just, I understand and can and know what people are feeling, with their protests and wanting to be heard, wanting to get their voice out, wanting to make sure that this does not happen again. We're going to find a way to be heard.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, it's just to echo what Kristen said, is that people are certainly, that go back to that words, those two words, that profound exhaustion. I think that's what we're seeing, not only here within our own city and our own county, but in other cities as well, is that sense of people are tired. One of the things that I was thinking about as we've been talking is, over the last couple of days, I've been referencing back to Martin Luther King's quotes and things like that. And I actually, earlier today, went back and started reading his letter that he wrote when he was in Birmingham, Alabama, in the jail. And he actually talked about kind of this sense of, back then when they were marching and protesting, this pent up resentment and the suppressed frustration. And I think, it brought chills when I read that, because that's what's happening now, in a sense that, we're frustrated, people are tired. And so, they're out there, as Kristen said, that unheard cry, that, people want to be heard. They want the systems to finally say enough is enough, and that there's time for change. And so, I don't condone the violence. I don't condone the rioting and the vandalism, but I certainly understand it. I understand the hurt. I understand the exhaustion that everyone is feeling. And I certainly understand that we are at a time in our country that we do need change. We certainly need change.
And I ditto everything you all said. I definitely agree. I believe that a protest is meant for your voice to be heard. That's the whole reason you're doing it. You're protesting against something, and you're protesting for something that you believe in. And so I don't think that anything is wrong with that. And never will I or do I promote violence or looting or rioting or any of that stuff. And I'm just going to share this. I posted this the other day on social media, and these are my personal thoughts. But I put until statements and promises are equivalent to systematic changes, we shall not be moved. And I truly believe that, because it's time for these changes, systematic changes across this country. It has to. And this is one of those movements where we can't protest today, protest tomorrow, and then everybody gets tired, you stop hearing about it, and it goes away. No, I think this is the beginning of something, and this is something that has to have follow through. And I believe that this country is at the point where we're going to finally see some changes in those areas. And then I wrote, uh, now let me be clear, I do not promote violent and or destructive protests, but I do understand why people are so angry, myself included. We must understand the systems are not changed based on emotions and anger, but systems are changed when emotions and anger are backed with strategic plans, organized movements, and consistent actions led by wise counsel and respected leadership. The world is watching us. Let's get it right, since the world keeps getting it wrong. Let's move with a mission, birthed from a cause, but for a purpose. And so I wrote that because I believe that with the protests, and they're different in every city. They're different. Some are being led by leadership. Some are being led by people that just believe in it. But the thing that hurts me the most are the ones that have turned violent or rioting. But the thing about it is, we have to understand too that they're starting off, many of these protests are starting off as that protest, but there are people and agitators, and I mean it's all over the media, that are coming into these protests and starting problems, and they aren't black people. There aren't black people all the time. They're coming in, they're breaking windows. And it's one thing that I always talk about. I'm a criminal justice major. I have my undergrad in criminal justice, and I've been talking about it. I always talk about it to my friends and my mom and them. But one thing I remember, we talk about the broken windows theory. And the broken windows theory is, it was a experiment that they did in the community where they put a car on the street, left it there for a week. No one touched it. One day they came, not one broke one window out, not one window out. The next day, all of the windows were broken. They did the same thing to a building. No one touched this building. They went, broke a window out of the building, put some graffiti on it. And this building had been sitting there. Within a day or two, all of the windows were broken out. And so it's called the broken windows theory. When it's something that's broken and you don't take the time to fix it, people just start contributing to what's already broken and making it worse. And I feel like it's the same thing in this situation. If we had fixed this thing years and years ago, we wouldn't be seeing so many incidences that we're seeing. But when you see that someone can be racist and can kill someone and take someone's life and not have repercussions and not have consequences, the next person feels like they can do it too, and the next person. And now we end up in this place where we are with a completely broken, it's not even fragmented, it's broken system. And we have to fix it, or it's just going to continue to get worse. And each time it gets worse, it's going to be harder and harder to repair it. So
I agree. I definitely think you hit a point that I have felt for a very long time, and I actually kind of wrote a similar post on the other day, and it just talked about the institutional and systemic racism. I feel like that's the foundation of our society and within our communities. And I actually wrote that, like a house that is built on a shaky, unstable foundation, you're going to begin to see cracks in the wall. And that's what we're seeing. The cracks that are presenting themselves is within our policies. They're within our systems. And until we address those cracks, we can't have a house that's equal. We can't have a house that's balanced and welcoming for every person, whether you're Black, white, for a person that's like my Jack, that's disabled. And so if we're not willing to have this openness to really engage everyone with an openness conversation, then I don't think, I think we're going to continue to find ourselves having these unfortunate live streams on social media talking about situations like what we're talking about. And I guess we got to individually ask ourselves, individually and collectively, when is enough, and what are we going to do? And I think the hope that I have and the faith that I have is that there is something we can do. There is something that each and every one of us can do. It's just that when are we going to do it?
That's right. And you let right. Go ahead.
TJ in the chat said, we don't just need change, we need transformation.
Absolutely.
Builds on what you were saying, Catherine. It's got to be we can't keep ignoring the foundation. We've got to transform.
Yeah,
that's very true. So Catherine kind of led into what I was going to ask. So what's giving you hope right now? And then after this, I want to kind of talk about some things as well that people can do, because one of the things that people keep asking is, what can I do? What can I do? So we'll get to that. But what's giving you hope in these times, Kristen?
I think one of the things that's given me hope, and it boils back to when we talked the first time in quarantine, we talked about compassion and what people need to have. I think one of the things that give me hope is the allies. I've seen a lot of people step up and, say that this is wrong, and say that we have a problem, and say that we need to change and that our country needs to change. And I mean our white friends and counterparts in our social system. But I've seen a lot of them step up and say no. They are saying, as well as we, enough is enough. And so that's one of the things that gives me hope, is that we're not alone in this fight, that we do have some people who want to stand with us to see the change that's needed in our country. And so that's one of the things that gives me hope at this time.
For me, what gives me hope is that...
And I agree, I think...
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
For me,
go ahead, Catherine.
It's similar to what Kristen said, is that there's so many people just within the community. And I guess I try not to take it political, but for this one time, I am going to take it political because I think, there is such an importance that lies here. There's so many people that are stepping up. We have some phenomenal community leaders. I think our pastors, the faith-based community, that gives me hope. And we talked about it, right? We're in the midst of a pandemic. And so there's so many people within our community that presents themselves, that are stepping up to say, this matters, this is important. So our faith community, our pastors, even the elected officials, not only myself, but there are people that have stepped up, that said, I want to do something. I want to run for office. I'm serving on somebody's campaign, or I'm helping to get the word out about voting, or whatever it is. People across our community, whether they're white or Black or Hispanic, they're coming out and saying, this is my role that I can play in this form of fashion to make a difference. That's what gives me hope, whether it's in the midst of a pandemic or a tornado, or when there's injustice like what we're seeing. That's what gives me hope and keeps me driving for the things that are important in our community.
That's good. That's good. And mine would just be ditto to what you all have said. What's giving me hope is, for the first time, I have, people who normally don't say anything or take a stand, even political people, even people in leadership, in business, all of that, they're standing up and saying, this is wrong. and they're speaking out. And so to see the level of awareness and the level of people, and some of these people are in very high positions, and and they're surrounded by people who don't believe what they believe and don't feel the same way that they feel. So for them to be able to have the courage and have the human decency to be able to speak out and say something, that gives me hope. The other thing that gives me hope right now is that I'm a woman of faith, and I know that God does not make mistakes. I know that God is a strategic God, and he already know the end from the beginning, And so I truly believe the scripture, I think it's Second Chronicles 7, it's either 7:11 or 7:14. But it talks about, if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves, pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. And I truly, truly, truly believe that that's what's going to happen, because I've been seeing the church, white churches, black churches, they're standing up and they're speaking out, they're praying. I was in a business meeting, and I'm the only black person on this Zoom call, and they literally stopped and was like, I would like to pray. Let's pray. And they prayed. And then they actually prayed for me, and then I've had friends who've reached out who we've never had these types of conversations. It's been straight business or just straight, friendly conversation, but they're reaching out and actually saying, how are you? And that means a lot to me, because it's like, wow, like you actually care how I'm doing. Because like we talked about earlier, this takes, this can play mental health, stress levels and everything. This stuff is real. So for people to actually put everything before, and just like, how are you doing really? And is it anything I can do to help? That gives me hope. It definitely gives me hope. And so we only have a few minutes, and we started at 7:15, so we have about 3 minutes. Is there anything else that you want to share, for regardless of what it is, how people can actually get involved? I think you've shared a little bit of that when you were talking, but other ways that if people want to make a difference, want to get involved, things that they can do. And I'll just start, and then you all can. We pretty much said it. Just showing that you're concerned, showing that you care, speaking out. Think about the friends. If you don't have many black friends, or you have some that you're close to the other, just reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm praying for you. I'm thinking about you. Is there anything I can do? And I mean, most likely, no, there's nothing outside of what you can do, for all of humanity. But just doing those things, contacting your elected officials. And the biggest thing of them all is go out and vote. Go out and vote, because if we're out here protesting and we're out here speaking on social media, don't stop at a hashtag. That does nothing. That does nothing. As soon as you post 2 more, or somebody else posts something, that's the end of your timeline, and it means nothing at a certain point. So go out and vote. That is where you make the real change. And it's not just the big elections like the presidential elections, it's the local elections that matter the most, because that's how you get to those next steps. And so, Commissioner, I know that you definitely agree with that, because that's key. If you want to make systematic changes, it starts with the people who are in office. And so that will be my advice. Anything else you all want to say before we close out?
I would just build on what you just said. I mean, I definitely think engaging not only the elected officials at the local level, I say start there. If you don't want to start at the state and at the federal, start with what's in your backyard, and that's your local officials. Don't forget the county officials. So too often we focus on our city officials. They're important, love them dearly. But don't forget your county officials. Look at all your local officials. If you need help with that, reach out to me. I don't mind giving you that information on how to find out what your local officials are. But certainly engaging. But I think taking engagement a little bit further, and that's just having that dialogue. Like this dialogue, I love this. And thank you, DeJuan, so much for using this platform and creating this platform for us to have these conversations. But we've got to continue these kind of conversations and having them more often, but really having those hard truth conversations. Sometimes we don't want to talk about racism, but racism needs to be talked about. Racism needs to be talked about in the workplace. Racism needs to be talked about in the churches. Racism needs to be talked about on social media, like we talked about. Racism needs to be talked about in our schools. It is real, it exists. So having that open and honest conversations and really engaging with everybody, all of your contacts, all of your circles. And the last one that I'm gonna close with is the most important one, and to end institutional systemic racism is vote. That is one of the most powerful things that you have is your voice and your vote. Use it. Get out. If you know people in your circle, start there. If they are not registered to vote, get them to vote. Absentee voting is another essential thing that's coming up that people have the right to do, and a lot of people don't know about absentee voting. Again, sometimes we miss out because we're not informed. Get informed, know your rights, vote.
And let me just say this before you jump in, Kristen, what you just said. One thing that I've heard a lot of people say, and I know we're going to end, but is that my voice doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. But they're the same people who are out there protesting, saying, doing these chants and things. Well, if your voice doesn't matter, why are you out there?
Yeah.
Why are you out there? So if your voice matters, then your vote definitely matters. And so go to the polls, Kristen.
Absolutely. I mean, Commissioner Jeter is a prime example. She won her election by 15 votes. So
it matters.
Every vote matters. And so I echo everything you ladies have said. I'll say that we need to get out there. We need to vote. We need to use our voice. We need to do all of that. But I want to encourage people to have conversations with their family, with their friends. I want to encourage white people to say, when they hear their family members talking and saying things that are inappropriate or prejudiced, challenge your family members, talk to them about it. Why do they feel this way? It just all starts with that conversation. And so I just want us to keep having conversations with each other, keep having conversations with the people that we hold accountable for our country, keep having conversations with our coworkers, everybody. Just keep talking about it so that we can acknowledge it and start to work on change.
That's right. Well, thank you for that. And in closing, I just want to tell everyone, thank you all for joining us in this conversation. You all have left some great comments. Thank you for getting engaged with us. And I'm going to go back and read some because I know I probably missed a lot of comments trying to talk and look at the chat, but thank you. Also, just remember that this is not the end. This is only the beginning. And so if this is the end and you don't hear anything about it, then it's your fault because everybody's depending on you. That's the way I look at it. And then you could say the same thing to me. Everybody's depending on me because every vote, every voice matters. And so thank you for joining us. Keep the Floyd family, keep the Arbery family, keep all of these families in your prayers. Keep the police department in your prayers. Yes. Keep the elected officials in your prayers, the leadership, the pastors, keep everyone in your prayers. This is just, it's not anything that's easy to deal with for anybody. And so we can't get so caught up in talking and giving lip service and on Facebook and social media that we don't take the time to pray. So thank you all and love you, ladies.
Love you. Thank you guys so much.
All right.